Good morning. I'm Ken Fisher of Atigro. Welcome to our virtual coffee series, Leaders Adapt to the New Normal. Today, we focus on the SBA programs, particularly how the COVID Relief Act passed in December affects the Paycheck Protection Program. Our strategic partners in my company, Atigro, have put together a series to address issues that are top of mind to small and medium business owners and executives. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. These sponsors have made it possible to reach the community and continue this series. Atigro started off the new year by welcoming aboard Clark Taylor as our Chief Digital Officer and a partner at Atigro. Clark has search engine optimized the sites that you see here. Also, very recently received this personal endorsement from the Senior Data Architect at Instagram. If you know anyone who'd like a roadmap to SEO success, we are offering that as a light initial engagement to get to know Clark and his team. And we'd appreciate any suggestions or referrals. This is a great way to plan out how SEO can improve your brand awareness and sales, or how to improve your current search engine optimization efforts. Some quick housekeeping notes. In order to keep the conversation orderly, I'll be asking all questions, which I'll get from the audience. Please use the chat feature to ask your questions. I do have your questions, which you have already submitted, so you do not have to resubmit. Please keep muted unless you're asked to clarify your question or asked to follow up. Here to explain how the SBA programs, as well as are affected by the COVID Relief Act, as well as other questions on SBA programs, is our favorite U.S. Small Business Administration loan officer, Rod Johnson. Welcome, Rod. How are things at the SBA?
Very hectic, Ken, very hectic. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. And 2021 is going to be a good new year because we're going to have a lot of businesses because of the new $900+ billion stimulus that was signed on December 27th at 5:30 by President Trump. Companies are now going to have access to an additional $284 billion of what we're calling PPP 2.0. Now, there are going to be certain rules that are associated with PPP 2.0, and it's going to focus on actually two main things. One, if you've already received a PPP, and then two, what you need to do if you haven't received a PPP. And then, actually I need to add a third one, and that is EIDL, and that is the EIDL loan versus the newly funded out of this $284 billion, the $20 billion in the new EIDL advance. Now, I can already anticipate the first question, and it's going to be related to the EIDL. When does the EIDL advance portal reopen? Well, I've been getting that question since the thing has been signed into existence, and I honestly do not know yet when the EIDL advance portal will reopen, but we still have over $100 billion in the EIDL loan program that you can reapply to or apply to. But what we're going to do is systematically go through this short presentation, and then I'll be available to answer, or hope to answer, most of the questions that you have. So first, let me tell you what my role is at the SBA. I have two roles. One is as a lender relations specialist. So what I do is I work with all the banks throughout the DMV to keep them updated on all the changes to the SBA business development programs, like the Signature 7A program, and under that you have the SBA Express, and you have the cap lines of credit. And then the other program is the 504 program, which is what's used primarily to buy equipment and real estate. So I keep the banks updated on all the business development tools that the SBA has to guarantee your loans. Now, actually, since the middle of last March in 2020, my role has been to keep the SBA PPP and EIDL programs up to date with the lenders throughout the DMV so that they can actually get the money into your hands to sustain your business. The second part of my job is that I'm actually the Small Business Development Center project officer for the SBDCs in Northern Virginia, which are located in Springfield, Fairfax City, Loudoun County, and Old Town Alexandria, Virginia. And then of course at Howard University, and they also have an office on the campus of American University as well as Howard University. And in that role, I just ensure that when you go to visit those SBDCs, you're receiving the technical assistance that you need to either start, grow, and sustain your businesses. Now, what I will say right now is if you don't have an accountant or CFO or CPA to assist you with filling out the application for what we're going to go over, the first or second draw for the PPP loans or for the EIDL loan or for the EIDL advance, please take advantage of the SBDCs throughout the metropolitan area. And how can I forget the University of Maryland? The University of Maryland also has a small business development center, but that's actually overseen by our district office in Baltimore. But I do have a lot of contact with the guys at the University of Maryland. So please use those SBDCs as a tool to help you apply for these federal government loan programs, as well as SCORE. All right, so what we're going to go over are the key dates, the first draw for PPP, the second draw, the forgiveness updates, and then what to do now and additional resources. So as I mentioned earlier, Congress intended this round of the PPP to increase access to COVID funding. Now, initially opening the PPP applications will come from certified development financial institutions. So that's already happened. And that actually, those portals opened up a week from yesterday. And they were open for minority companies to be able to apply and get first dibs at the money, because if you were reading everything that was in the media, minority companies felt that they were locked out or didn't have the opportunity to apply for the first round of PPP funds because big businesses actually received a lot of the money. And so last Monday and Tuesday, the certified development financial institutions, along with community banks later last week, opened their portals so that people in underserved communities could have access to the money. You also had the opportunity to use the lender match platform. So if you put your company's profile out there, then the lenders will go out and pick your company in order to assist you in getting PPP money. And then of course, there's continuing training and materials via the SBA and the Treasury to help you be able to get access to these funds. All right, so here are some key dates. So January 11th, right, PPP opened for the first draw for applications from what I just talked about, the community, they call them community financial institutions. I call them certified development financial institutions because that's who mainly are making these loans. On the 13th, and they were for minorities. On the 13th, PPP opened for the second draw, and we're going to talk about the first and second draw in a little bit here, and applications from CDFIs. On the 15th, that's when the community banks opened their portals, right? For the first and second draw. The community banks were defined as banks with 1 billion or less in assets. So for example, Industrial Bank located in Washington, DC, Harbor Bank in Baltimore, okay, are two banks that come to mind. City First Bank in Washington, DC, there on U Street, all under $1 billion in assets. And then on the 19th, which is today, all the institutions open their portals for the first and second draw, okay? And then on March 31st, that's when all applications have to be submitted. And that's when hopefully all of the $284 billion will be used to sustain your businesses. Now, what I will say right here is that if you remember the first PPP, those funds went pretty quickly, okay? And it was a much higher dollar amount. And so here we only have 284 billion. So if you weren't a part of the first group last week, okay, living in an underserved area or a minority, then right now, today, you need to be applying to your bank to make sure you're in line to get the PPP funds, okay? Because I do think that the funds will go pretty quickly. All right, so what is the first draw? So this is for people that did not receive the PPP loan. I think it's prior to August 8th is when the first round actually closed down, okay? Now, and we'll go over what organizations are eligible. All right, so the covered expenses have been expanded. The borrowers can now select an 8-week or a 24-week period, covered period after disbursement. Now, I don't know why a company would choose 8 weeks when you can have 24 weeks to actually use the money and, you know, hire your employees back and use the money versus 8 weeks, but at least they're giving you an option here. Certain borrowers may request an increase to their original PPP loan amount. And then again, you must apply on or before March 31st or until congressional appropriations expire. It's going to be March 31st, okay, 2021. Next slide, please. All right. So the newly eligibles, housing cooperatives, destination marketing organizations, 501c6s, such as the chambers of commerce, because there was a lot of controversy around that the first time. Did chambers qualify? Did they not qualify? And then eligible news organizations, still eligible, right? Partnerships, corporations, LLCs, independent contractors, sole proprietorships, okay, are all single member LLCs. They're all still eligible. Of course, the 501c3 nonprofit organizations, the veteran organizations, and tribal businesses all are still eligible for PPP, first draw, okay? So for borrowers that previously received a PPP loan, which is this, now we're into the second draw, you must have 300 employees or less and suffered a 25% reduction in gross receipts. So the question is, how do I show a 25% reduction in gross receipts? Now you can pick any quarter, all right, for 2019 and 2020, year over year. So for example, and what I would do is use a cutoff of the 30th or the 31st. So for example, to show that 25% reduction, you may say, all right, I'm going to choose June 30th, 2019 to June 30th, 2020 to show that 25% reduction in gross receipts. Or you might choose September 30, 2019 versus September 30, 2020 to show that reduction in gross receipts. All you really have to do is, if you're using QuickBooks or whatever accounting software that you're using, then that's what you're going to submit to be able to show the 25% reduction. You don't need to, you know, have a balance sheet at all, right? You're just submitting the income statement. So I think that should be fairly easy to do. If it's not, then you should be able to have someone at SCORE or the SBDC or your accountant actually whip up those statements so that you can show the 25% reduction. Now, for borrowers in the food services sector, the maximum loan amount for a second PPP draw is 3.5 times the average monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs. up to $2 million. Remember, last time it was 2.5 times for everybody, but for the hospitality and restaurant industry, it's 3.5 times, the monthly 2019 or 2020 payroll costs up to $2 million, which I think is great. And the second draw loan applicants must submit the information on the SBA form 2483 SD, which is the borrower application when applying to the lender. All right, the second draw, PPP loan eligibility. So here's what's key. You must have used either all or close to all of the first draw, okay, to be eligible before the second draw is dispersed. So let's just say that you haven't used all the money, but you're close. So maybe what you do is you bonus the remainder to your employees and call it hazard pay, okay? Or whatever you want to call it, but it's a bonus, and it's to the employees. It's not to you, the owner. It's for the employees, and you just give them a bonus, and that way all the money is used from the first PPP, and then you're ready to go for your second draw. Okay.
Hey, Rod,
Go ahead.
what is using the money? How do you prove that? Because if you have a balance, is it that you have a floating balance less than the amount of the loan compared to the original floating balance earlier in the year, or is it you just say, okay, I allotted it to these payroll receipts and here's the receipts done?
Yeah, that's all. Here are the receipts.
Okay.
Yep.
So you don't have to show that you're down that much or anything like that. Just show payroll receipts.
Yep. Real easy.
Great.
Yep. You don't have any more than 300 employees. So Congress said we really want to try to focus in on smaller businesses. So you can't have any more than 300 employees. And again, you have to show at least a 25% reduction in the gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020, which I just talked about. So I think it's actually fairly easy to do. I think most industries have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. So I think at least a 25%, I've heard of companies being impacted 75% by COVID-19. So I think the 25% reduction should be easy to show year over year, okay? All right. All right, so the borrowers must apply for forgiveness through their lenders, and the lenders submit the borrower for forgiveness decisions to the SBA. All right, so that hasn't changed. All right, so what I'm going to do, it's not on the slide, but I'm going to go through this. So let's forget about the current act. So let's just say that you've decided right now you're going to apply for forgiveness. So you'll have all of your documentation that you're going to submit to your bank. The bank has 60 days to determine whether or not you'll be 100% forgiven, 40% forgiven, 60% forgiven, or not forgiven at all because you didn't supply the proper documentation. All right, so your bank has 60 days to do that. Then they send it over to the SBA. The SBA has 90 days to review the documentation that your bank submitted on your behalf. After the 90 days, the SBA will get back with your bank, and then your bank will then inform you on if you have 100% forgiveness, 30%, 40%, 60%, or no forgiveness at all. Now, given some of the conversations I've had with borrowers already that misused funds, and this is what I mean by misuse. They used it to update their website. They used it to purchase a business automobile. They used it to purchase equipment, okay? They used it to pay down existing lines of credit with their bank. All of those are non-starters. That's not what you were supposed to use the PPP money for. As a reminder, 60% was to be used for payroll, and the other 40% for specific expenses: gas, water, electric, interest on a commercial mortgage, the internet, business cell phone, okay, transportation. It was very specific as to how you were to use that money. And if you didn't use the money for those purposes, then basically you're going to wind up with a loan from the bank, and the bank is not going to be too happy with you. Okay.
Just to clarify, you said 60% for payroll, but I thought it could be 60% or more up to 100% for payroll. Is that right?
Yeah, I said the minimum is 60. I meant to say, if I didn't, 60% minimum for payroll. And yes, let's say you're a single member LLC or a sole proprietorship, then the easiest way to get 100% forgiveness is if you pay yourself. Okay, use 100% of the money to pay yourself. So what you would have done or should do if you're applying for the first time this round is you're going to open an account. You're going to write a check from that new account. You're going to deposit that check into your personal checking account. All right, so now we have two source documents. We have the account that you wrote the check on, which you're going to submit to the bank, and you'll have a copy of the canceled check. Then in your personal account, the transaction will show up in your personal account, and now you will have that bank statement, right, to be able to give to the bank to show that you use the money for 100% to pay yourself. I mean, that one is just so easy, and you submit that, you've used the money for 100% to pay yourself, that's 100% forgiveness. That's a real easy one, okay? So I thought I would mention that. Okay, so you have the update per the Economic Aid Act. All right, so idle advances are no longer deducted from the forgiveness payment. So that caused a lot of issues, but because it was actually taxable, but we'll come back to that. All right, forgiven PPP loans are not taxable income. Well, we knew that. That was why when the program was set up in the beginning, it wasn't supposed to show as taxable income, but Congress forgot to tell the IRS that, okay? And so we had to close that. We had to close that loophole, all right? So forgiveness PPP loans are not taxable income. Expenses paid with PPP loan funds are now tax deductible. Well, when the program first came out, they were supposed to be tax deductible when you use those PPP loan funds, but Congress forgot to tell the IRS that, right? And so everybody was up, you know, in an uproar because for a while, that wasn't the case. Well, now Congress fixed this go round, all right? So expenses paid with PPP loan funds are now tax deductible. They tell you to consult with the IRS for details, but you don't need to because it's already been covered. And so the CPAs and you borrowers are now happy that you can go ahead and deduct those expenses that you use the PPP money to pay for, all right? And that's within that 40%, just so you know. Expanded forgivable expenses are permissible for any PPP loan not already forgiven. And we'll talk about that hopefully in the next slide. Coming soon, and I'm hoping by the end of this week, the simplified forgiveness application for PPP loans, 150,000 and under. All right, so when the analysis was done, it was found that 87% of the $525 billion that was put out on the streets for you businesses to sustain yourselves, 87% of those loans were $150,000 and below. Now, if you recall, there were three forms. There's a 3508 short form, or 3508S as they call it. That was for loans 50,000 and below. Then it was the 3508EZ form. That was for loans $50,001 up to $2 million. And then there's what I call the 3508 long form, right? And those were for people that got loans from $2 million up to $10 million. Well, now I think what's going to happen is that you will have another version of the 3508 form, but instead of $50,000, they will now just take it up to $150,000. Okay, but that form I hope that form comes out by this Friday. So if you have not already applied for forgiveness, just wait until this new 3508 form comes out for loans $150,000 and below, and then apply for forgiveness. Okay, and I'm sure if you're talking to your CPA or your bank, they're telling you the same thing, or they should be.
PPP loans, whether first round or second round, if they're forgiven, are not taxable, do not show as income. Someone want to just
right. Yeah, it's a so now it turns into really a non-taxable grant.
Right, and then the second round will also be forgivable. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
When you mentioned draw one and draw two, that really applies to language about the second round. Draw one is when you haven't participated in the first round. Is that
That's
right?
correct. That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay, great. Just someone asked to clarify. So go ahead.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. All right. So what do you do now in additional resources? All right. So you're going to contact your lender and find out if their portal is open. Now, honestly, everybody's portal should be open as of today. It should be. Actually, after I get off of actually about 12 o'clock today, I'll be making my phone calls to the various lenders throughout the DMV to ensure that, you know, their portal is up and running and taking applications. Okay, because it's important that they are. All right, if you do not have a lender, find one on Lender Match, SBA.gov, you know, /PPP. You can get the most up-to-date documents there. And then you can go to SBA.gov /Lender Match, and you can go out and choose a lender. And there'll also be lenders going out there to see and actually get some PPP applicants like yourself. So if you don't have a bank, use Lender Match. Now, here's a question that I get all the time. So if I went to JP Morgan Chase and got my first PPP, you know, can I go to another lender? Well, technically, yes, you can go to another lender, except I would probably go back to JP Morgan Chase as an example, because they already have your information on file. And so they are able to actually process your loan a whole lot faster because they already have your information. Okay, so that's how I would actually proceed. I wouldn't go to another bank and apply for PPP 2.0. Okay. Now, additional resources, actually, of course, you can email me and I will email you back. And it's better to email me than to call me because I can respond faster via email. Okay. Now, also subscribe to the SBA.gov /updates, because as soon as something new comes out about any of these programs, then you'll have the update right from the SBA, not from the internet, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these other social media outlets, right? You'll have the information directly from the SBA. And that's what you want, Ken. All right. So thank you, Ken, because this is hot off the press. So with these links, you'll know how to calculate the maximum loan amount for your first draw, right? And what documentation you need. And then you have, you know, the borrower resubmissions of loan forgiveness applications. With this one, like I mentioned earlier, I would probably hold off on my forgiveness and wait until that form of $150,000 and below comes out. And then I would go ahead and do the submission. And then you have a procedural notice that talks about excess loan amount errors. And this is more for the banks and what they should do if there was more money given that should have been given. Now, or is this the end? All right, so here's something that I want to mention with EIDL. If you remember, under PPP 1.0, and this is all about timing. If you recall, the signature program was actually the EIDL program. And if you remember back in, I think it was March, when President Trump was giving his State of the Union address or something like that, he said that, look, he's already contacted the Treasury and the SBA for a loan program to fund it to the tune of $50 billion. And that was actually the EIDL program, okay? And with that, you had the EIDL loan, which was a 30-year loan at 3.75% for profit organizations and 2.75% for nonprofits, okay? You only had to give a personal guarantee if the loan was over $25,000, and the SBA took a first lien on, or blanket lien on the assets of the business, okay? Now, that was the EIDL program. So you were able to get $1,000 up to $10,000 for each employee, $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. So a lot of companies applied for the EIDL loan and the EIDL advance. So they got the EIDL advance. So we're going to use this as an example. So you got the EIDL advance of $10,000. Then you went to your bank, you applied for a PPP loan for $100,000. Good. Well, the bank, what they were to do was to subtract the EIDL advance, the $10,000 from the 100. So now you have a PPP loan of $90,000. So then when you went for forgiveness, you submitted it to the bank, it came to the SBA, you got total forgiveness of $90,000. Great. All right, so that's scenario one. Scenario two is you applied for PPP first for $100,000. Then you went and applied for the EIDL loan and the EIDL advance. You did get the $10,000 EIDL advance. So you go for forgiveness. Now the bank didn't know that you got the EIDL advance of $10,000 when they made you the $100,000 PPP loan. So now you go for forgiveness. You go for forgiveness for $100,000. Your bank sends over to the SBA your forgiveness application for $100,000. The SBA says, aha, but you know what? You got that EIDL advance, customer and bank, and you didn't subtract the $10,000 from that PPP loan. Well, they couldn't because they didn't know about it. So now you, the borrower, you were left with this $10,000. And the bank is saying, well, you know what? You owe me $10,000. I can't help it that, you know, we didn't know about the EIDL advance, okay? Well, under this bill, now that's been corrected. So let's just say, using this example, if there's $10,000 left, okay, then the SBA will make sure that that $10,000 will be covered on behalf of the borrower. The payment will be made to the bank, and then that $10,000 goes away. And that's key, because there were a lot of loans that were being forgiven, but they still had that loan for $1,000 up to $10,000 from the EIDL advance that wasn't forgiven. Okay, so that's key. I don't know if anybody really paid attention to that or experienced that, but this bill actually closed that loophole. Okay, so I wanted to mention that. So questions?
Yeah, we have we have a bunch of questions. Not sure why I'm getting echo. If you're not a minority business legally, although small, 4 people, could you apply for the second round with a CDDI?
Oh, a CDFI? Sure, you can. Absolutely. So you can go. So you can go to the Latino Economic Development Corp. You can go to the Washington Area Community Investment Fund, Industrial, City First, Harbor. Yep, you sure can.
Okay, great. And then Jessica asked the question, this is at least 1 quarter to 1 quarter, not year to year. I think she's talking about the drop, the 25% drop.
Yes, she is.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, you can choose a quarter. It doesn't have to be, say, like year end, 12/31, 12/19 to 12/31/20 for the entire year. We're just look, you're comparing quarters, right? You're just comparing quarters, year over year, to show that 25% drop.
Okay, and then what's the time frame for the second draw? When do you expect to get that money, actually?
All right, so let's hope that you go back to your same bank, all right, so that it can be processed a lot faster because they already have your information in the system. So it shouldn't, well, you know what? I was about to say it shouldn't take more than a week. It just depends on the bank and how many applications they receive. Okay, that's actually the more appropriate answer.
I see. And then here's another question. It's an interesting one. So if you're calculating revenue comparisons, do the PPP funds that you received and expect to be forgiven for, do they count in that quarter time frame? So if you have quarter to quarter, and in the quarter that you're comparing last year to the previous year's quarter, you received a loan that you expect to be forgiven, does that money count as revenue in this calculation for a 25% drop for one quarter, single quarter, year to year?
So is the question, at the end of the day, with that 25% drop and you get a second PPP, when it's forgiven, will it count as revenue?
No, not exactly. So let's say in the third quarter, your revenue went from 100,000 2019 to 75,000 2020 for the third quarter only. But you also received a $50,000 PPP loan in the third quarter of 2020 that you expect to be forgiven. Can you count that quarter as a 25% drop?
Yeah, you can count that. Yeah, it is still a 25%. Yes, it is still a 25% drop, regardless of that $50,000 PPP loan.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the question. I understand there's a prohibition on 20% ownership by entities organized under the laws of China, but does that prohibition apply to Chinese resident individuals?
Oh, now see, that's a fine line. So if you're a Chinese resident individual, that's different.
Okay, great. Now we have a lot of questions that were submitted. I want to make sure we get to them. We have an industry classification code of 72 restaurant with multiple entities that own each location. Different illegal entity owns each restaurant location. On the first round, we applied and received the loan as one entity, even though we could have applied under each entity based on our understanding of the affiliation rules.
Which is what you should have done.
Okay.
And so that's what you're going to do this time. You're going to apply under each entity. Okay.
Right. Okay, that's the answer. Great. That's the question they wanted to ask. 501c6 specifics for fiscal year filers is a general question. I don't know if there's a specific issue you want to comment on.
Okay, so it's not real. All right, so let's just say June 30, right? A June 30 or September fiscal year end. Well, okay, you can still use whatever quarter, year over year, to show your 25% drop. Mm-hmm. So let's just say you had a 6/30 fiscal year end. Well, you know what? You may wind up using March 31st, 2019 and compare it to March 31st, 2020. Okay, so you still meet the guidelines. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if you're 6/30, 9/30 fiscal year end, whatever, you know, you're still quarter to quarter. You're fine.
Great. Yeah, there's a question about putting a link in the chat, and we will provide these slides Monday or Tuesday, and I will try and do that before the chat closes, but the links will all be in the slides we provide, just answering Jessica's question right now that she put in the chat. And one person asked before, disadvantages to a new lender for a second PPP. I think you've answered that, so I'm just going to go to the next. Basically, you might get lost in the shuffle. It's easier to go to the same one.
Yep.
If your first round PPP forgiveness is still with the lender, not yet submitted to the SBA, we have any trouble filing for the second with a new lender? I think the answer is no to that. If the forgiveness is still pending?
Right. So if the lender, I mean, if it's still pending, okay, that's fine.
You're encouraging us to apply for the second round today and wait
Yes,
till Friday with that new form coming out to apply
yes.
for forgiveness. So I'm applying for a second round PPP loan. What look back period can I use when calculating payroll costs? I've heard I can use 2019 or 2020. Can I just use a spring 2019 to spring 2020? I've already supplied in all my documentation for my lender and request the same amount as last time.
All right. See here, well, I'll give Rod's editorial to the question. So you want the maximum amount of money that you can get for PPP. The way I would look at it, if my payroll was higher in 2020 than it was in 2019, since they're giving you the option of 2019 or 2020, and my payroll was higher, because remember, it's going to be 2.5 times, right? So I'd rather use the higher payroll number so that I can get more money under the PPP. That's the way I would actually do it. That makes sense to me.
Okay. So the answer is yes, you can, but you should look at what's going to maximize the amount.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I have also when they ask for number of employees, do they mean how many I have right now or how many I had on February 15th, 2020?
Well, you're applying now, right? So let's just say this is the second round or even the first round. It's now. All you just had to do is be in business by February 15th,
okay,
2020.
And then for the second round, do I have to have the same number of employees I had on February 15th to get forgiveness, or just maintain the employees I have now?
Wait a minute. Ask that again.
For the second round. So in other words, I'm applying for the second round today.
Yeah.
I have 5 employees today. Last year I had 7 employees. Does it matter that can I get forgiveness if I maintain these 5 employees this year?
Oh, yeah. Okay, I got it. Yes.
Okay. I have a very small business and qualify for the second round of PPP funding based on everything I've read. For my first round of PPP funding, my application included 4.6 employees, 5 employees including myself, and 3 full-time, 2 at 30 hours per week. The loan was $78,000. My lending institution submitted a forgiveness document in October. After using my PPP funding, I let one of my employees go. I currently have 3.8 employees. One of the employees will be going on maternity leave sometime in April. I'm hoping to hire a full-time person to cover for her and stay on as she adds hours back, be back to 4.8 employees by June or July. What should I request for my loan? Because I currently have less employees than when I applied in 2020. Do I need to apply for less money? Again, hoping, I think we answered that. I'm sorry, but I just want to make sure we answered that. Again, I'm hoping to get back to where I was, but don't know if this will happen by the end of the 20-week period. So I think the answer is, if I'm understanding you, Rod, apply for what you have now. Is that
yes?
Yeah. So whatever it is today, regardless of your plan to put someone, hire someone, or regardless of plans, you have to apply for facts on the ground as of today. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, great. I have an idle grant, a PPP loan, and an idle loan. The total is under $40,000, and forgiveness of the idle, and the answer is no, right, Rod? You've told me that many times.
Right. Yep.
Loan time frame and define expenditures classifications. Just what software, types of software? Do you understand that question? A little bit vague to me, Rod.
Let's see. Software.
Define expenditures classification, such as software. What types of software? So I think what they're asking is for forgiveness on that 40%. Was there an expenditure that allowed for software to be purchased? Maybe it was for web-based software, internet-based software. I'm not sure what they mean. It's kind of a vague question. If you don't know, we'll just go on.
I don't know.
Okay. Should we wait for updated guidance if we already qualify for the easy form or short form I think that's for forgiveness. I think you answered that. Wait till this latest form.
Yep, wait to the latest form.
Okay. Okay.
Let me say what the eligible expandable expenses include: modified business operations, supplier costs, and costs associated with complying with health and safety guidelines. So what does that mean? PPE, right? So your employees are coming in, so you have to, if you buy face masks and gloves and the shield, right, that people use, that's now a part of that 40%, which it wasn't before.
Great.
Okay.
If you did, okay, and so you can't, if you're applying for forgiveness now for round one, you can't include PPE only for the second round, right? Is that what you're saying?
You can
at all, or they
they've modified it, so now whether it's one or two, you can.
Okay, great. Okay, here's another question from Jessica. Would you be able to put the, sorry, my payroll is highest in the look back period from before, in other words, the first loan. But if you use payroll from 2019, should you use the number of employees now? One person left to go to grad school. I think the answer is the number of employees, yes. Currently, well, you answer, Rod. I want to take a guess.
Well, all right, so you had.
What number of employees is that 2019 or now? Or, yeah.
So I guess you're going for the second round for the PPP.
Right.
And you're trying to determine which period to use, 2019 or 2020. I think that's probably what you're doing. But then one is leaving to go to grad school. So then I guess the question is, will it take you down to what? So let's just say you had 20 employees in 2019. You have 19 now for 2020. I'm assuming that one employee less is because the guy went to graduate. So now you're down one employee. So
correct. They took me off mute. So hi, Rod. It's Denise. So we had one employee leave in October, and she went back to grad school in Italy. But when I did my first round, my payroll was higher because we had her. And now we don't. So now I have 4 employees, but I wanted to use the 2019 payroll.
See, I would use yeah, because remember earlier we said since they're giving you a choice of what to use.
Right. So I got a choice, but I have one less employee.
Okay. Well, but does it match the 2020? So does it match now 2020?
No.
So is 2020 less than 2019?
Yes.
And then use 2019.
Okay, and the 4 employees, even though I had 5 last year.
Use the 2019. They're giving you the option, right? They're giving you the
option. So I'll just use 4 employees and the 2019 payroll.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
The goal is to maximize.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And the look back period, when you say 2019, you're talking about January to December 2019 average payroll or total payroll?
Yeah.
Okay, versus 2020 total payroll. Yep. Okay, great. Okay, and it looks like we've gone through all the submitted questions. Does anyone else have a question? We have a couple minutes left. Rod does have a hard stop.
And what I'm going to do is actually send, as information comes out to me, because believe me, there seems to be new information coming out almost every few hours. Okay, I'll make sure that I get it over to Ken, and Ken can post it.
Sure, we'll post it.
And so that you'll have the latest and the greatest information. There is just so much information coming out very quickly about this, and frankly, I'm surprised at the speed at which it's come out, because in the law, I think it gave the SBA like 14 days to come up, to actually go through 5,600 pages of the bill, okay? And then take out of that bill all the things that we've talked about this morning, and then push it out to all the lenders, the resource partners, and most importantly, you, the business owners. But again, there's still information that seems to come out every few hours. So I'll make sure that Ken gets it and he'll post it so that you have it.
Great.
But please utilize SBA.gov or Treasury.gov, because those are the two reliable sources of information, okay, for this new $284 billion stimulus.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, first of all. I really appreciate all of this. Can you remind us what for the owners draw portion of it? Last time, I believe it was capped at, was it $15,800 or something, which was slightly less than the 2.5 times the, I know that you cap at the 100,000.
Yep, that's right.
Is there a certain amount maximal that we can include for owner's draw? Last time I believe it was a little bit less than the $100,000.
It was a little bit less. And you know what? I honestly haven't seen anything specific, because that is a question that I need to find the answer to be certain. So I don't want to give you the wrong answer. So give me a day so I can come back to you with the right answer.
Thank you.
We'll include that in our email. It goes out Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
As well as any other downloads we get, and we will let everyone know if when Rod sends us stuff, we'll post it on the website. In the archive section, we'll give you the link so you don't have to look for it. One last question, Rod. I would like, from Yolanda, I would like to follow up on the question regarding filing separately after filing as one entity. Does that create any logistical issues as we're going back to the same bank?
No.
Nope. Okay, great.
No.
Great. Okay. Great.
So, all right. So I want to make clear, because people, particularly with EIDL, well, first, let me say there's still over $100 billion left in EIDL. The maximum amount is $150,000, because for a while we were hearing that they were going to increase it back up to $2 million for a loan, but the maximum is still $150,000. So I want to clear that up. The other thing I want to clear up is, as of now, there has been no talk of the EIDL loan being forgiven. It is still a 30-year loan, okay? So the EIDL loan is just that. It is still a loan. The third thing is, look, like you, I'm trying to find out when that $20 billion EIDL advance portal will open again, okay? Because, you know, if you can get up to $10,000 just for filling out the application, whether or not you get approved for the EIDL loan, why wouldn't you apply for the advance, particularly since it's a non-taxable event? Why not apply for that money? Okay, so that's the other thing, Ken. As soon as I find out, that I'm going to send it over to you so you know, so people can go ahead and apply for that EIDL advance. And oh, by the way, if you got an EIDL advance before, if I didn't say it before, you can reapply for the EIDL advance. Okay.
One thing that confuses me about that, Rod, is earlier you said if you get the EIDL advance and you get the PPP loan, the bank's going to say, you owe us what you got for the EIDL advance.
Yeah, but now that's been corrected with this bill. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. The SBA will take care of that, quote, $10,000 in the example that I used. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. That was a big sticking point.
Okay, so now today you can apply for EIDL advance and it doesn't get taken off your second round PPP?
That's right. That's exactly correct, Ken. That's exactly correct.
Glad we clarified that. That seems to be a confusion. Well, thank you so much, Rod.
Could I ask one more very quick question? I'm really sorry.
Okay, yeah, one more.
Really, really quick. You mentioned my largest amount look back would be March to March. All the documentation that I'm seeing so far says that I either need to pick 2019 or 2020 in terms of payroll costs. I just wanted to confirm that I still could do the March to March that I did from last time, because what I'm seeing still says you either pick 2019 or you pick 2020.
That's correct. Yeah.
You can do March to March.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
That's correct. Yes.
Great. That is confusing that it's totally independent. The loss factor versus your payroll amount is totally independent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, thank you so much. We've gotten a lot of comments in the chat Rod, saying how helpful this has been, how clear it's been presented. So we really want to thank you. We're going to shoot this out to a couple thousand business owners so they can also view the presentation as well as download it, as well as watch the entire video, as well as that's going to be sent to everyone on this call as well. So I'll let you go. Thanks so much, Rod. I appreciate your time. And I think you said something about more updates in February. So, we'll probably have you back then if that's okay.
Oh, you know what? Okay, yeah. All right. 30 seconds. I
Sure.
just saw something flash up. All right. So now for the SBA development program, you remember I started talking about the 7A. Maybe we were offline, but for the 7A and the 504 and the different loans, now the guarantee amounts have increased. So if you want a 7A loan for working capital or to buy a new building, instead of the bank getting a 75% guarantee, now they get a 90% guarantee, okay, which is really a good thing. And then those for you that know about the SBA Express, that now goes up to $1 million, up from $350,000. And now the bank, instead of getting a 50% guarantee, they now get a 75% guarantee for doing that SBA Express loan. So Ken, I'm going to need to come back on and talk about those things.
Great.
That just literally popped up. All right.
Well, let me know when. We're happy to have you back. Thank you again so much. I'll let you go. We're getting you exactly at 10:59. So good luck at your next presentation, Rod. I know you have lots of people to inform about lots of things, and call those banks. Make sure they have the portals up.
Yep, that's right. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
everyone for participating. Bye-bye.